This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. A lot of men who are drawn to trans women are just kind of drawn to them because they're different. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. Thank you so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. We upload these videos every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I appreciate those of you guys who are here every single week, leaving your long, heavy, thick brews of True Tea. Thank you so much for joining me here. I appreciate you guys for just being here and contributing. It really does mean an awful lot to me. If you are brand new to this channel, what we like to do here is learn, share, and grow through education and conversation. And this is the conversation segment. This is where I encourage my followers to just sort of share what their reactions to these subjects are in their most raw, honest, and real way. You might be right, you might be wrong, but either way, you're honest, and that's what True Tea is all about. So if you're into that sort of thing, I would highly suggest that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. And by the way, when it comes to subscribers, I know that I hide my subscribers on here. I will say that that is mostly for myself, not because I'm ashamed or whatever, but I have 172,000 subscribers right now. And I just want to thank you guys for joining me here. Those of you guys who have been subscribed for a really long time, thank you so much. I've decided that once I hit 200,000 subscribers, I will finally post a sewing DIY video. So if you are interested in seeing that, I would definitely suggest that you encourage your friends to subscribe to this channel so that I can upload that video. I recorded this really fun one when I was on my way to Folsom and I was stressing out over sewing this thing for Folsom. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, tell your friends about this channel so that we can, get into it. So anyway, we're gonna be having a conversation about why men like transgender women. But before we get into that heavy loaded conversation, let's drink some tea. So personally, I am drinking some green tea, some regular Lipton. I'm on my way out, I'm moving. This is gonna be one of the last videos that I will be filming on this background. I'll be in a different environment pretty soon. I don't know when this video is gonna go up, but in the process of my move, it's been kind of expensive. So if you guys really like what I'm doing here, definitely, would suggest that you either join my Patreon or maybe send me a tip. I would definitely appreciate it. It's definitely going to be a few complicated months. This is December when I'm filming this. So yeah, or November. It's going to be December when this goes up, but it's November right now. So I guess I just broke the fourth wall a little bit. Anyway, let's get into this video. Enough preamble. Let's just take a sip and get into this tea. So this is a subject that I have been dancing around for a very long time on this YouTube channel. You guys have requested this. I've talked about this a lot. I'm finally gonna make this video. One of the most frustrating things about this conversation is that a lot of people who have it are not transgender women, nor the men who date them. So there's a lot of just ignorance. There's a lot of people just ignorantly sharing, what their perspectives are. And there's also people who sometimes have this conversation without a lot of perspective. I have been dating as a trans woman basically since I transitioned over a decade ago. So I have kind of a lot to say about this subject. I'm also somebody who has historically grilled men for the reasons why they like transgender women. So I have some explanations. I will say some of them won't make sense, but here we are. These are the answers that I've been given. So I wanted to share them to you. So I guess it's important to start this conversation out by establishing the kind of men that I personally like, right? The kind of men that I personally go for, right? And then we'll go down the long list of different types of men who like transgender women, right? So for me right now, at my big age of 29, I've dated a lot of men who do not have experience with transgender women. I've dated a lot of men who are still sifting through their feelings about transgender women. And at this age and at just this point in life, I don't have patience for that. I tend to only want to date men who are experienced with transgender women so that they can sort of understand that some of their assumptions and fantasies and ideas around transgender women are not true. A lot of men, because transgender women are so uncommon, they're only really engaging in their attraction to transgender women in the realm of fantasy. So it's very, very common, we'll get into this later in this video, but it's very, very common for men who approach transgender women to walk into the situation with a lot of assumptions, a lot of ideas, a lot of fantasies, like I said. That is incredibly common, and because of that, I tend not to want to interact with those people because, as I've said, you know, in the past and previous videos, for me, when it comes to approaching men who are specifically looking for transgender women, I'm almost always going to disappoint them for many, many reasons. I mean, just to overshare, but I'm a trans woman who, I don't top, okay? I don't top, which means there's no part of my body that goes inside of a man. I don't top in any way at all whatsoever. And that's twofold. This is really oversharing. I don't top because I physically don't like it. It doesn't turn me on. It's something that I'm not interested in. But also, this is where it gets a little bit too much information. I also physically couldn't do that even if I wanted to. I couldn't penetrate somebody even if I wanted to. I will get into all the reasons why and how. Maybe I'll do a whole other video where I get into that. People who have followed me for a while probably have heard me talk about it, but I know I couldn't do it. So it's one of those things where it's not even like an option for me at all. It's not even on the table at all whatsoever. And I will say that a lot of men, we'll again unpack this later, when they approach a transgender woman, a lot of them are sort of looking for that experience. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. A lot of them are looking for the experience of, you know, bottoming or being penetrated either anally or orally by a transgender woman. That is kind of what they want, you know? And so for me, this is just me, I've had to sort of explain to men that that's not something that I personally do. So when it comes to the men that I date, I really only date men who are experienced with transgender women, don't need that or require that in at least their relationship with me. You guys know that I'm polyamorous, so I don't mind if they have that other relationship with somebody else. But with me, it's just not gonna be, it's not gonna be something that I do, right? So that's important. I don't deal with men who want that. And I frankly deal with men who truly see transgender women and cis women as maybe a little bit different, but largely the same, right? So all of my partners, I have 3 of them, they're for the most part, one of my partners is not super experienced with transgender women. In fact, I'm the first one he's actually dated. He's an anomaly. But most of my other 2 partners, they've had relationships, they've had, you know, their various experiences. They're not fetishizing transgender women. They're not, you know, going after transgender women. They didn't come after me because I am trans. They were attracted to me, and that was where it started. And then me being transgender did not push them away from, you know, their attraction to me. So that's where we are. That's where I'm at. I feel like it's important to establish that because some of the shit I'm about to tell y'all in this video, it goes from feeling very fetishistic to, you know, being not so fetishistic. So yeah, let's get into it. So I guess one of the things we should also start at the conversation establishing is that, like I said, for a lot of men, transgender women live in the realm of fantasy. I used to grill men all the time when I was younger about their experiences with transgender women and how they got, you know, drawn to transgender women. Because I guess when I was younger, I had a hard time even believing that it was something that like men could be attracted to trans women, that it was common for people to be interested in trans women. Like I guess as a trans person, you do deal with that sort of internalized transphobia where you can't trust that someone could ever truly be interested in you. Do you know what I mean? They have to be trying to do something else. They have to be trying to live some sort of, you know, gay fantasy or something. Like it's very hard for you to really believe that anyone could just truly be into you. So I spent a lot of my youth grilling men at like trying to get them to tell me the why. Why do they like trans women? What are they really interested in? And why are they really here, right? And I heard like 2 really common stories, right? The first common story was I was flipping through a magazine. I went to the back of the magazine. It's usually Playboy when they tell this story. You can tell that I date older men. They hit this page. They hit this page that had transgender women, and it was an interesting thing for them because for the first time in their lives, they found themselves attracted to somebody who is not designated female at birth. They found themselves attracted to somebody because they, you know, looked like a woman and had all of these things, but they had something different about them. Their part down there was different about them. And for a lot of men, that's like the little nugget of what gets them curious, because they're attracted to everything, right? But when it comes to the genitalia, that is a big question mark for them. And where men go with that emotion can go from anywhere, right? It can go literally anywhere. For a lot of men, one of their draws to transgender women is just the pure difference of it. I know that for some cis women, a lot of these things in this video is going to sound really sort of shitty and terrible. But for a lot of men, like, they've been with a lot of cis women. They've dealt with, you know, vaginas and things like that. And they just want something different. The difference about them is what makes them interested in us, right? It's not even necessarily like they want dick. It's more of, it's different, right? And when it comes to that, I guess we're gonna start out by, I guess we're really focusing on the genitalia here. Like I said, when it comes to that initial curiosity, that can go in so many different directions. There are some men that I've met who are very, very, very attracted to women, solely attracted to women, don't have an interest in men whatsoever, but they do find themselves drawn to a penis, right? This is something that I guess I still don't fully understand, and I will admit that I still don't fully understand. But in my conversations with men when it came to this sort of thing, is that a lot of men, for them, now, some of the cis women are gonna laugh at this, but for some men, right, there's a lot of mystery around how, you know, cis women receive pleasure or express pleasure, right? A lot of men are very afraid of them doing something to a cis woman and the woman faking it or pretending, or their pleasure not being something that is truly felt, right? And so for a lot of these men, their draw to the genitalia is less that it's a penis and more that it is very clearly communicating, you know, whether it's turned on and when it orgasms. Now listen. A lot of these men out here can't find the clit. So I know that for some men, that's kind of the nugget of it, is like a lot of men just haven't really sat with cis women long enough to sort of understand the inner workings of their bodies. Of course, they're not all the same and things like that. So, you know, sometimes it comes from that and the feeling of, I guess, inadequacy that they sometimes feel with that, and how much clearer cut, clearly explained and clearly communicated, you know, penis is. You know, but that's the reason they gave me. Like, I'm not saying I understand all of these reasons, but it is what it is, right? And so that's one way that some of these men internalize this, is that they don't quite view it as a man's penis. They view it as an engorged clitoris, right? Or just a way, or something that is more, you know, heavily sort of obvious, I guess, sexually. Now, I will say that when I was younger, this was a real sticking point for me, you know, especially being somebody who doesn't top, especially being somebody who, you know, when I was younger, I talked about this in previous videos, but like when I was younger, I did get a lot of validation out of, you know, men being attracted to me. I would say that, you know, if a man was attracted to me, that a straight man was attracted to me, if a straight man was attracted to me, then he clearly was attracted to me as a woman, you know. But for me, what would change that is if he was interested in my genitalia. If he had any remote interest or attraction to my genitalia, that meant that he really wanted a man. That meant that at the end of the day, while he's trying to do this shit with me, what he really wants at the end of the day is some dick, right? He really wants that dick and he really wants it for men. So it would always be this weird thing for me why these men would go out of their way to experience that particular experience with a trans woman, but not with a gay man, who statistically are far more accessible. They're statistically far more accessible than trans women. To go back to the initial point I was trying to make with trans women being so rare, trans women are not very common, right? So that means that when men have initial attractions to transgender women, there's really nowhere often for them to experience that. They really don't often have a way of actually engaging with a trans woman and figuring out if it's something that they actually like. So they live in the realm of fantasy. They live in the realm of, you know, not quite knowing how their feelings are about this thing, right? That's very, very, very common. Because of course, I would often tell men when they only wanted to bottom and they wanted access to my genitalia, I always say, well, just go get a dude, just go get a guy. But I realized with time that a lot of these men are just not interested in men. And I guess that brings me to the next thing. For some men, what draws them to trans women is the taboo of it all, right? A lot of men do really get off on the fact that they're doing something that they've been socially encouraged not to do, right? I've been on dates with men, not in a very long time, but I have been on dates with men where they are really fascinated and entertained by the fact that I look cis and that people aren't looking at me and they can't tell that I'm transgender and da-da-da-da-da, but he knows my secret. Right? He knows my secret. There are a lot of men out there where that is part of their excitement for transgender women, is the fact that a transgender woman is, you know, maybe embodying this thing that they're told they shouldn't do, that they're told that they shouldn't engage with. So that's when it's really exciting for them. Right now, of course, that comes with a lot of toxicity. Of course, if you're somebody who's getting off on the taboo of engaging with their partner, that means that that to some degree, you've compartmentalized your partner as less desirable. You've compartmentalized your partner as somebody who you should in so many ways be ashamed of. So some men, a lot of men who do engage with trans women, you know, like a lot of trans girls, you listen to them talk about dating, you'll hear a lot of stories of these men being down low and discreet and not wanting to take them out, not wanting to be seen with them and da-da-da-da-da. What some people don't get is part of their excitement with transgender women is the fact that they're keeping it a secret, is the fact that they're doing this naughty thing that no one's supposed to know about. Now, one thing I didn't add to the very beginning of this, you know, explanation of what I personally like is that I have not dealt with those men in a very, very long time. I don't deal with men like that. I go out all the time. I'm engaged in social circles. I mean, I go out a lot. You know, I refuse to be somebody who has a relationship with you in the confines of your or my apartment. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, for me, I've said I'm not going to settle for that so I don't attract men who want that from me, you know, or at least I haven't really given them the time, the chance to get to that point where they say that they only want to engage with me in the privacy of my apartment, right? That's just not something that I've dealt with for a very long time because I've set that boundary for myself, right? So, you know, for some men, that's the excitement. The fact that it is such a taboo, right? That's the fact that it's so forbidden. That is their draw and their attraction, right? Now, I will say, this is an aside, right? Going back to the whole down low thing. You know, there's a lot of people who, with a lot of the shit that I said, there's some people who have different reactions to men just in general who are attracted to transgender women. There are some people who say that a man who's attracted to a trans woman just is confused. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They just are confused. And I will say this. I will say that there are some of those men who are confused, right? It's not the fact that they're attracted to transgender women that makes them confused. It just is where they are. Like I said, for a lot of men, they don't have access to trans women, right? I think men get confused with trans women in two different ways, right? One way is that they have the idea and the fantasy, but don't have the access, so they don't actually know how they feel. I've been in situations with men who were curious about, were interested in, but then when they actually had an experience with me, realized that it's something that they didn't want. They realized that this was not something that they wanted. And so when it came to actually engaging with me, actually doing stuff with me, they freaked out. They couldn't do it because at the end of the day, it was just better as a fantasy, right? So I think that some men are confused in that way, right? Then I guess there are also men who maybe, I'm not saying all, most of the men that I personally interact with have no interest in men, but there are some men who do pursue transgender women as a sort of lead up to their interest in men. Some. I would say that that's very uncommon given, again, how few transgender women exist. It's just a lot easier that if you're attracted to him, especially if you're a straight guy. If you're a straight guy and you really want a guy, I'm not saying all gay men are like this. A lot of gay men aren't. A lot of gay men want to date other gay men, but there are a certain amount of self-hating gay men who are very excited by the idea of a straight guy being interested in them. So they have the ability to, these men who are interested in, who would be really truly interested in men, if they really wanted a guy, it would be so much easier for them to get a guy than it is to get a trans girl, which, by the way, if they find a trans girl online, there's a high likelihood that trans girl isn't going to want to engage with them for free. So it's just a lot easier for these men, if they wanted men, to be with men, right? When it comes to being confused in another way, this is the situation that I find myself in quite a bit. Another story that I hear, remember I said there's two, we're still on that, I guess. Another story I hear, in addition to the, I found someone in the back of a magazine story, is this story of the guy who goes out to a club. It's usually a club or a bar or something. He talks to this really, really beautiful woman. He's really, really interested in her. They decide to go back to his place or her place, and it's then where she reveals that she's transgender, right? This is where the story diverges sometimes. In some stories, the man has a great, amazing experience with her, and that begins his, continued interest and curiosity in transgender women. And another way the story goes is that they don't have an experience. He freaks out. He's turned off. He's disgusted, and he walks away from the situation. And upon thinking about it in the future, thinks, well, shoot, I'm kind of curious how that would have gone. So now he's curious in another way, but still kind of confused because he doesn't really know how he would actually feel, right? That's a very, very common story. And frankly, to be completely honest with you guys, the latter story, when I hear that story, I think those men are more likely to actually be interested in like relationships with transgender women and not just sort of fulfilling a sexual curiosity. Because, a lot of trans girls, they complain about, and rightfully so, they complain about these men only wanting them for sex, right? The thing is, a lot of these men mostly pursue transgender women in a sexual context because that is the big question mark in their head. They're very confused if they could actually engage with a transgender woman in a purely sexual way, or if they could see them in the way that they see every other cis woman in their lives, right? Like I personally said, I like to deal with men who have experience. And a big reason why I have that preference is because a lot of times men start there. They start from I don't really know if I can have sex with a trans person, so let me try to find a person who I can have sex with just to figure my shit out. And then that person ends up being the person that helps them figure it out. And maybe they're not really into that person, but they go off and find another trans person who maybe they do have a romantic connection with, and they form a relationship. That's very, 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 very common, right? Where these men just had to figure out the sex part, and then everything else falls into the place later. Being in the spaces that I'm in so frequently, it's really common for me to maybe meet somebody who is part of my social circle, who I might have known for a while, but didn't know that I was transgender, have an interest in me and still have that big question mark over their head, but be curious enough to, pursue it with me, especially if they see other men pursuing me, right? For a lot of men, they're sort of, where I think a lot of men stop is how they reconcile their attraction to transgender women with their peers. How are they going to talk about this with other people? Because again, transgender women are so uncommon. They're not all over the place. They're not as accessible as every other person. So the likelihood that they have to talk about this in general is very, very low. The likelihood that they're even gonna know somebody who's in a relationship with a transgender woman is very, 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 very low, right? But in my circles that I've seen, which, there are some trans people here and there, I have seen men pursue me, and then other men probably pursue me because they saw other men also pursuing me. Sometimes it does sort of take that sort of almost, domino effect of this person, that person figuring it out, Because I know for a fact that there are men out there who would probably more confidently pursue transgender women if they knew that this was a thing that more people were doing. Because a lot of men feel very isolated in their attraction to transgender women. They feel like it's something that's constantly misunderstood. And, frankly, when they approach trans women, a lot of them end up getting yelled at. While I'm at a position in life right now where I'm only really interested in men who have had experience with transgender women, a lot of trans women, you tell them that you tell a trans girl that you've had, as a guy, you tell a trans girl that you've had experience with another transgender woman, you become a chaser. Some trans women really need that like badge of honor that they were the first, they were the best, they turned him out, they were the ones, they need that validation, in order to feel full and things like that. But for me, I don't like that, because in my experience, when men don't have experience with transgender women, it almost never goes well. It almost never ends well, because at the end of the day, they don't really know. There's a lot of these men who don't actually have, for me, one of the most heartbreaking things has been getting together with a guy who is attracted to me, who really does like me, who theoretically and intellectually does want to have sex with me, but physically can't. That's a really hurtful position for me to be in, like where someone's so uncomfortable that they physically can't have sex with me because of just where they're at in life. Like that's real upsetting. That's real hurtful, right? So I don't like being in that position, but some trans girls do. But like I said, some men, because of how they feel like they can't talk to non-transgender people about this, and also the way that a lot of trans women respond to their interest, they just feel like, there's nowhere to go, right? Now, I guess this is a good time to talk about chasers versus, I like this term, a lot of people don't, trans attracted men, right? Now, I personally define a trans attracted man as a man who sees transgender women as, similar to, to cis women, in that some of them they date, some of them that they, one of the issues I have with sometimes the trans community when talking about this stuff is some people define chaser as a person who's only interested in having sex with a person, right? Obviously, as trans people, because we're so underrepresented and things like that, we do sort of feel hypersexualization and fetishism a bit more than cis women do. Cis women are still fetishized for their gender and but they feel in a very different way. I think a lot of us, we feel like we're limited to our sexual use in our context with men. So cis women are often granted more of a wide range of expression, right? So I get that, right? But there's really nothing, in my opinion, wrong with a person who meets somebody, just wants to have sex with them, and doesn't want it to be more than that. Is that hurtful to some people? Totally. The problem is more so if that person misled that person into believing they wanted more, right? Which we'll get to, because to me, that's the chaser part. But I don't think that a man who purely wants to have sex, just wants to have sex with a trans woman, is necessarily a chaser. For me, the chaser part comes when they are being manipulative. I have observed chasers come together and exchange notes about transgender women. For me, chasers are men who are so accustomed to engaging with transgender women that they have, a strategy. They got a strategy. Chasers know exactly what you need to hear. Chasers know exactly what they need to do. Chasers know how to prey on the insecurities of transgender women. They know how to gaslight you, to get you to feel like, oh my gosh, I guess I'll never have the opportunity to fuck a straight guy. That for me is who chasers are. I've seen it. I talk about the times recently where I've gone to some of these more trans sex parties sort of spaces, and chasers are just all over the place there. They are just all over the place there. They will walk up to me and say shit like, you're the most beautiful woman in the room. And a more insecure transgender person would hear that, be flattered, and suddenly want to, prove to everyone else around them via sex that, I got it like that. Like that's how a lot of trans girls think, oh, he fucks me, therefore I'm cuter, I'm fishier, I'm this, I'm that. But it's like, no girl, he was just looking to get his dick wet, right? And the moment he gets his dick wet, he's going to leave, he's going to walk away. A lot of these men that I've met who I define as chasers are men who are on the down low, they're married, they're hiding, but they are so invested in pursuing and connecting with transgender women that they've perfected their approach. They've perfected the perfect, things to say and the perfect pitch to get them into the bedroom, the perfect gaslighty, abusing thing, right? To me, that's a chaser. Not someone who likes the bottom or someone who's interested in transgender women, but somebody who has perfected their manipulation tactics in order to gain access to transgender. To me, that is what a chaser is, right? That's a chaser. And I guess for me, I've had to go through various different, thoughts on this, because here's the thing, I don't top. And I have dealt with men who they're literally like, well, if you don't top me, what's the point? What's the point in me even dating you? Which I hate. To me, that feels kind of chasery a bit. But at the same time, I know that for some men, listen, this is maybe oversharing or whatever, but I'm polyamorous and I date, I have 3 partners, but I date various other people. And there are some men who I date who their cis partners can't do certain things. I'll just tell you a personal story. This is actually kind of terrible, but I went on a date with a guy yesterday who his partner has fibromyalgia, or I'm probably saying that wrong, but his partner has like this nerve condition where she can't cuddle and be intimate in the way that, he would like to be. And so part of his sort of solution is that he wants to pursue people who he could have that sort of connection with, right? And so if he's trying to date someone in addition to his partner, he doesn't want to date somebody who can't do the things that he already isn't able to do with his partner, right? For some people, I know that their rejection of trans women who don't want to top kind of boils down to that they are a bit more disappointed that they can't do certain things that they can. Most men, they can penetrate anyone who's willing to let them, when it comes to the opposite, that's for them a little bit more hard to find. And so for them, that just is the thing that, they want. And so I've learned to sort of respect it as this is your interest, this is your thing. I don't think that on its own makes you a chaser, but I can't do this thing for you, right? That's kind of where I've landed, right? So I guess, here's another one. Now this for me is a really bad one. This is a really bad one. There is a certain contingency. I know this feeds really deep, really well into the TERF shit, but there is a group of men who like transgender women. Well, I guess we'll start here. There are some people who are attracted to transgender women purely because they're feminine. And I've talked about this in previous videos, but there are some people who, upon interacting with transgender women, or even with androgynous men, or even with feminine men, right? They've never been in that position before, and they realize, because now the opportunity is being presented to them, that they're less attracted to just women, but they're attracted to femininity, right? They're attracted to femininity across the board. And for some men, it takes them meeting somebody who's outside of a DFAB, female identified person, for them to be like, oh yeah, that's who I'm attracted to, right? To understand that they're attracted to just femininity. So there are some men who are just attracted to femininity, and that is why they like transgender women. Well, if those women are feminine, The part that I was gonna say that's kind of bad is that there are some men who are attracted to transgender women because they believe that it's a really anti-feminist thing, right? Some men believe that cis women have in so many ways turned their back on femininity. They've stopped wanting to be feminine. They've stopped wanting to be submissive. They've stopped wanting to embody their interest, right? So their attraction to trans women comes from the perspective that while those cis women are over there not fully, embodying, these feminine ideals, which I think is bullshit because a lot of cis women still do, trans women are over here fully jumping into it, fully committing to it, and in their often incorrect view, all for the satisfactory of a man, right? So for some people, that is their draw. that trans women embody a sort of, for them, hyper feminine ideal that they think they can't really find in a cis woman. Of course, that's ridiculous, but I'm just telling you what I've been told. I'm not saying it makes sense or that I agree with it. I'm just telling you what I've been told, right? And I guess tangential to that is there are some men who are attracted to transgender women because they are attracted to plastic surgery. I've definitely met some men who they have this like almost fetish for plastic surgery. I mean, you guys have probably seen some of this shit, you know, on a Barcraft documentary or some shit. Like there's a guy who wrote this book about trying to convince your wife that she needs breast implants and things like that. Like there are some men who just are very attracted to that sort of fake plastic surgery idea. Let me know if you guys want me to do a video on plastic surgery because I have a lot to say about plastic surgery, but some men are just attracted to that sort of look, right? And for a lot of men, cis women who have that particular type of plastic surgery and trans women who have that particular type of surgery, basically the same. So there are so many different complex ways and reasons that men are attracted to transgender women. So many, and I'm positive that I have not covered them all, but a lot of them are related to what I just said. You know, a lot of men who are drawn to trans women are just kind of drawn to them because they're different, really. They're different. There are some men who are drawn to trans women because they feel like they get along with them more. Some men are drawn to trans women because they believe, I hate this, but they believe that they have the best of both worlds, right? They have the mind of a man and the body of a woman, which is very annoying to me because, you know, look, I'm a very sex positive person. I like all that shit. It's great, but I don't actually have that much sex. I don't have that much sex. I know that it might sound like that from like a lot of the stories that I tell, but I don't have that much sex, right? Probably more than most with 3 partners and all, but like I don't have that much sex, right? But you know, it's like one of those weird things where like they are drawn to almost this idea of like, it's almost like how guys are attracted to like tomboys, right? Like they think, oh, she's gonna watch sports with me and suck my dick. It's kind of like that sort of thing where they think, they assume that because a trans woman was socialized as a little boy or some shit, that they're just gonna have more in common. And I'm not gonna deny that that might be true for some people. It's definitely not the case for me personally. I cannot offer the best of both worlds. I can offer the best of Kathryn's world personally. So I don't really like that shit. It's really, really upsetting and gross to me. But for some men, that's the draw, is that they are different and that they are more open. Like some men believe that transgender women are just more sexually open-minded than cis women. Again, some of these reasons, like they kind of do relate to, for some men, the negative opinions that they have of cis women. Like cis women are, I mean, look, a lot of cis women, I know a lot of very sexually liberated cis women, you know, they might be sexually liberated, just not interested in being sexually liberated with you, which is very different than like not wanting to be, you know, because some men, they're like, oh, you know, cis women, they're just not really interested in sex in the way that trans women are. And it's like, sis, they are interested in sex, just maybe you're not a person they want to do the thing with, you know, that's what, yeah. Because some people are like, oh, these trans girls, they have higher sex drives. You know, I'm sure that's true for some trans women, but if you're on hormones, if you're post-op, like, it's not quite the case, really not the case, right? You know, so that's sometimes the reason, that's what another reason they give, you know, this sort of idea of being able to sort of engage in both sides of the thing. So yeah, anyway, the reason that I date men, you know, the reason that I would accept for the men that I personally date is that they're attracted to me because they're attracted to me, and they're attracted to me because they're attracted to women. Like that's kind of the basic one. Those are the men that I tend to date. I don't want to really date a guy who is trying to date me for my genitalia. I don't really want to date a guy who's trying to date me because I'm the best of both worlds. I don't want to date a guy who is trying to date me out of his anti-feminist realization of his I don't want that. I don't want that. I want people to want to date me because they want to date me. I mean, I'm pretty cool, so I would date me. I date me real good. Anyway, I think that that's all I have to say. I think that those are all the reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. If you are a man who dates transgender women, I would love to hear what your reasons are. Make your voice heard. This is when you guys can jump up and say, these are the reasons why I like transgender women, da 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 da. How did you figure it out? Where did it come from? Share what your experiences are so the audience can see. I do think that sometimes the frustration I have with this is that these conversations are not being had by the men who date transgender women and transgender women. They're being had by everyone but. And that's really, really frustrating to me because I know that there aren't these gay men out there trying to fuck trans women. That's not my experience. It's definitely not my experience, right? You know, maybe it's some people's, I don't know. It's not mine, so yeah. Anyway, also I want to hear from women too. If you're a woman who dates transgender women, I know that we spend way too much time focusing on cis men. I'm tired of it, frankly. But I would love to hear from cis women or even trans women, non-binary people, why your particular interests in trans women or trans people, where does that come from? Where do you think it comes from? I would love to hear that. Let's talk about trans attraction in a healthy way where we are, you know, putting words to it, we're making it represented, we're making sure that people know, and you know, because I know there are people who are going to be curious, who are going to want to read these comments, so make your voice heard. Anyway, if you guys watch this entire video, I would suggest you put this emoji in the comment section. I appreciate the fuck out of those, you guys who do that for me. You guys are the real ones. I love you, I support you. Thank you so very much for doing the thing for me. Anyway, yeah, I'd appreciate that. And right now you are looking at 2 videos that you can watch if you would like to continue to sip true tea on this channel. That helps me out a lot as well, in addition to the emojis. So if any of these videos interest you, click on them. Also in the corner, you have several ways that you can send me a tip if you would like to. Like I said, I am moving, so your tips would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Bye.